What's up, boss? This is Abraham's wallet. We span the gap between the austerity of obedience to God and the prosperity rising from faithfulness. Run your home and your dough like a biblical boss.
Jeff, welcome to the Abraham's Wallet podcast. We've known each other for a while and have been waiting to do this, but
yes.
I'm glad it's finally happening.
Yes, thanks for having me. It feels weird. I mean, we just hung out 5 days ago in Colorado, and now we're hanging out on Zoom, Zencastr streaming service. But I'm stoked.
Yeah, and you're sitting in Maui, right?
I am. Yes. For those who are watching on video, if you guys put out the video, I am watching from the upstairs loft of our barn on our 2-acre upcountry Maui property. Which, when people think of Maui, where we live, they probably don't think of. Like if I look out my front yard or front door, it looks a lot more like Kansas or something. It's very agricultural. There's cows everywhere, goats everywhere, and we do not live by the ocean. But yes, that's where I'm at.
All right. Well, for people who maybe haven't bumped into you, it's funny because when I talk to people about hanging out or whatever,
Yep.
they might not immediately know your name, and then I start describing a couple of things you've done, and they're like, "Oh, I know who that guy is."
Yep.
So, just give me a real quick. What do you do with your time these days?
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I'm like fuzzily internet tangent associated. There's just kind of if you can name internet things, it's a weird thing, and I'm comfortable with that identity, but it is also funny. And it also depends on, I've been doing it long enough, depends on the season when someone's jumped in. They're like, oh, that's the spoken word guy. I always love how people describe me. That means they really start, that means they watched me when I was 19, or it's like, hey, that's the, the dating relationship guy on YouTube. Well, that was when it was me and Alyssa in our 20s. So it's just the season they enter into. But yeah, I mean, professional interneter, if you want to call it that, started off doing YouTube, and it's branched off into just stuff that we love a little bit more specifically, which would be writing books, podcasts, kind of like a lot of e-commerce or, excuse me, small businesses. So day to day right now, I am, I work on family teams with Jeremy, which most people probably know him. If people have heard of John Tyson, that's probably actually taking up my most time technically right now. I work on helping him with a lot of his projects, Primal Path. We have a men's ministry now. And then I also co-own 50% of me and Alyssa, women's clothing business, which I'm in the barn right now, downstairs, that clothing business, Neuflora, excuse me, offices downstairs. So yeah, weird resume when I start saying it out loud, but men's ministry,
that's cool.
Women's clothing boutique,
And you and I are connected because you also own and certainly co-run the Family Teams Network, which has all sorts of tentacles that Abraham's Wallet has benefited from. But we get together a couple times a year with a bunch of dads who own businesses of all different sorts and talk through how to grow our families and how to grow our businesses. So that's where you and I have bumped into each other the most.
Yes. I love that. And thank you guys too. Not only have you said you've been blessed by family teams, but I've Abraham's Wallet has blessed family teams, whether it was homeroom or some of these other things. You guys are such experts on, how to use finances in a more strategic kingdom way than most people think about. And we've, pointed a ton of people to you guys, and I think it's blessed a ton of people.
Yeah. No, it's great. If you're on the homeroom Facebook group and I've ever been too salty in one of my replies, then you probably just need to get used to it because that's how I roll. But
exactly.
So I wanted to talk to you because with my day job, I do financial planning, and I actually work one-on-one with families, and we send out these surveys pretty regularly just to get a pulse on where our people are at when it comes to sometimes money stuff, sometimes really analytical, and it's like tax or insurance and things like that. But one of the unique things about how we do it is that we will get up in your business with regard to family and regard to relationships. And we did one last month on family rhythms and relationships. And the number one thing that we heard from mostly guys in ages 25 to 65 was, it's really hard for me to find mentors. So that's just common amongst almost every guy I talk to. And as I've kind of watched you from a distance, I've thought, Jeff is really good at collecting guys who are wise either broadly and you can just sit around and soak it up, or
Yeah.
have specific skills that you might want to kind of glean from. So I was kind of hoping we would just have a conversation about, in all these different stages of life and career and things that you've gone through, how do you go about finding mentors? And we can start there and see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I love this question because I care about it really deeply. And I think I can just probably talk for the next 30 minutes without you even asking any more questions on how do you find mentors. I'll try not to. I think a couple things come to mind. The first one being, first of all, realize how important they are. I think there's a general surface level awareness that like we need mentors, and I really wish I had one. Do you actually believe you would probably die spiritually, emotionally, financially without them? That's a little bit more serious than probably what you think. That's what I think. And now when I think of that level, that means I'm going to do anything possible to find that person, to get under that person, to talk to that person, to gain value from that person. Now, let's back up a little bit on 2 points. One, can we also admit in the West, our culture of individualism, busyness, that it's also very difficult? Like most cultures in the past, there's almost an inherent mentorship. You could call it apprenticeship, built into how you literally live life. We don't have that. So you got to fight. It's an uphill battle. So give yourself grace for that. And I'll talk about how to find them in a second. But then two, I think that the other point I would say is you also have to shift paradigms. This is really big. I feel like in the Christian world specifically, people see mentors like when they say like, I need a mentor or I want a mentor, and then when they're approaching that person or whatever, there's like two paradigms that I like to think of. The bad one is what most people do, which is they treat it like marriage. Like, where's my spouse? How can I go find the one? How can I get down on one knee? And how can I have this huge romantic gesture? And how can I ask them to be my mentor or ask them to marry me? Like, it's not, you can almost, sometimes the way people think about it, you can almost swap mentor with marry me. And it's the same like spirit and attitude. That's horrendous and wrong.
I'm picturing you getting down on one knee and proposing to Jeremy Pryor. Yeah.
Jeremy, please watch this and let me know if that's how it was. Yes, but people do that. Like people feel that like, and what that does is a couple things. One, that puts the pressure through the roof for you, puts the pressure through the roof for the person you're trying to approach. And like no one, especially like, here's the best way to put it. The type of people that you actually want to be your mentor are usually specifically built and have the personality traits and the success and the resume that will like absolutely disdain that. Meaning like they're just too busy for that. Like that's not like, they're like, whoa, that's kind of like, I don't need that. I don't want that.
Yeah.
A better way to think about it, looking for mentors, and I say that plural, by the way, because I think like you alluded to, it should not be this one person that's going to save your life, but just find older godly men and women in certain contexts that can just help you and can just serve you and offer certain value. But instead of thinking about like marriage, the way I think about it is me trying to earn the last spot on the sports team. Okay. That's that's just an analogy I use because I played sports my whole life. So marriage is like, you go with this huge romantic gesture and this huge question that has a lot of pressure. Earning the last spot on the sports team is more of an attitude of, oh my goodness, what can I do to like prove myself to that person? It's a wholly different paradigm, right? You go like, and I think about this in college when I was trying to like, earn kind of some ranks in the college baseball team. Is like I wanted to be the guy that I even volunteered to like do the laundry for the team and do some of these other like, because I was trying to like climb this rank of like showing that I had the chops, that I had the work ethic, that I had the humility to then be a leader later, which is then why I became captain on the team later. And I think that's why, because I set that tone. But that's a radically different paradigm, right? Of like I'm one of them is actually like, how can I work for this person? And how can I try to think of all the things that'll just like get me in their good graces, rather than can you be my mentor is actually a little selfish. It's saying like, You're busy, you have a lot of energy, and you're at a very high point of success in your life where everyone wants you and everyone demands you. But how about you give me, who like has none of those things, all your time? Like that's just ridiculous. So that's where I would start. And I'd love to hear your thoughts is when you shift that paradigm, what it does is it puts yourself in a position where you're actually becoming needed by that person. So like, everything as simple as like, find the people that you want to learn from and glean from, and then say, hey, can I file papers for you 5 hours? Hey, like go up to them and be like, hey, I got a busy life. I'm going to school. I'm going to college. Like maybe I'm a dad with young kids. I got 5 hours of margin in my week. I just like respect you and honor you. Can I help you? can I file papers? Can I run some errands for you? Can I do some of these things? Almost treat it like a glorified assistant at some level. And again, I think that actually does something to people's pride that is good. But what it does is it just, man, gets you in there. Like you were just in the inner circle very quickly when you're trying to offer value. But I don't know. So what do you think about that?
No, I love that because I'm not going to lie. My first experience with mentorship was being a clueless 15-year-old, and somebody just kind of came up to me and said, "It's smothered steak night at the Black Eyed Pea. I disciple guys. I would like to take you out and tell you what that
Yes,
looks like." So, praise God. I really think when you talk about saved life by a mentor, that was my
totally.
experience.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's
I don't
rare,
know.
but it's true.
Yeah, I don't know where I would be if the Lord hadn't just dropped that person
Yep.
into my life. That's not how it goes anymore, though. I am
Yes.
not getting guys walking out of the church building and just saying, "Son, you have something to learn from me, so prepare yourself."
Yes.
Um,
Well, I think a couple layers to that. One, I actually think with the way that we've created in our culture, I think a lot of old people are actually insecure to do that. We have to be honest with their own hearts. I think there's a weird, me and Alyssa talk about this all the time. There's a weird chasm of like, no one wants to go first because they're both insecure. So the
yeah,
mentee's like, I don't want to ask, I don't want to whatever. And then the older person's like, I think because we push old people so aside in our culture, they feel deeply insecure of like, I have nothing to offer. I don't want to, like, that feels bold of me, you know? And that's just general, but we've seen that play out in our life with friends' lives. And so I think it's always incumbent on the mentee to be like the pursuer, the initiator, stuff like that. But then also I do think, and this is not totally true, so this is a generalization, and it wasn't true in your context with what you just said, and I've
okay,
had environments where it wasn't true, but in general, I think someone who has an old person who has a ton of free time and is actually coming after you and saying like, I want to mentor you, in my opinion, generally is not the person I want to be mentored by. Because it's like, why do you have all that free time? What are you doing with your life? Like
right,
there's a little bit of that I think is somewhat true. That I've had contexts where that's not true. Yours, it wasn't true either. But that's just like a little bit of something of like, oh, I want the guy that's like, basically, here's a way to do it. Here's a way to say it. Find people in your life where you just be like, I wish in 20 years I'm exactly in their position. And not just success, by the way. Like I've actually most played that out with like the way that their 20-year-old kids are around them, love them, and care about them. I want to be exactly in that position in 20 years. Okay, that's the person I want to orbit around, help, serve, etc. And I think that's a question that gets you in there. And then secondly, one thing we're alluding to that I haven't said is it should be spread out, right? Like, and this is a little facetious to say. I don't think about it like this, but to some degree, it's like I feel like I have 10 or 15 mentors at some level. When it's like, oh, I got a finance guy, I got a family guy, I got a business guy, I got, you know what I mean? And it's like, of course, it doesn't play out that even. It's not like I have a Rolodex of mentors like that, but I think about it like that. Like I don't
oh,
go to the
for
same
sure,
guy for every question. And so I think that again depressurizes the situation a little bit if you're kind of looking for people's expertise.
yeah. I totally agree. And I think I've had this experience with specifically kind of that baby boomer generation, a couple generations ahead of us, where I've approached people and said, I would like you to be my mentor. And these are even people who are amenable to the idea, but they're kind of freaked out by
Yeah.
that language, and that's a lot of pressure. And
Asking
I've
someone to be their mentor is like a Christian college person asking someone to marry you on the first date. Like that just makes the girls run. Like they don't want that.
Right. Yeah. First date, sitting down and saying, I just want you to know I'm intentional about this relationship and it's heading towards marriage as far as I
Yes.
can. That's kind
If
of,
you're a wise girl, you're like, I'm out. I'm out.
yeah, I think we've learned from the 90s in that sense.
Yes.
But yeah. So one thing that I've just noticed is that we're a money podcast. So putting money and effort behind this. I
Yes.
love what you're saying about just putting your shoulder to the plow in some way that can help these people. I've
Mhm.
also found that I have a budget for spending money on time with old guys.
Yes.
And that could mean, hey, we're going golfing and I'm paying. It could mean I'm
Yes.
going to buy you a hamburger. Whatever
Yes.
it looks like, um, it's so much more natural when that conversation and it starts to flow when we're shoulder to shoulder and not sort of doing something that doesn't come natural for most guys, which is let's take some time and sit at a coffee shop and talk for
Yeah.
2 hours. Like that
Yeah.
can work, but it doesn't
Yes.
always.
And I think there's 2 points there because I think, yeah, me and you, and I think some of the integrated guys, there are some guys where a little bit more like we can go just like face to face and dig in on mind and thoughts and ideas. And I do like that. And so I try to pursue that with certain guys. But two things. One, a lot of guys aren't like that. I would say predominantly guys aren't like that. And then two, sometimes the mentor is not like that. So that's like the mentor's like, I don't want to sit down and just like, so here's an example I give too is like, I've had mentors and people were like, yeah, we are going to a coffee shop or I'm talking on the phone with them for a bit, whatever. And so it's very like direct communication. But I think in general, the better scenario that plays out well for most guys is think about like compare the like 1 hour at Starbucks, maybe talking about a Bible study or just like asking your questions with life versus how much it's kind of the classic like stuff's caught, not taught versus you being in their office, like swirling around that orbit for like 4 hours, just like listening to the lawyer conversation, listening to the general counsel conversation, seeing how he just talked with someone. And I've had good experiences and bad experiences with that where like, or I mean, they're all learning experiences where I've been in environments where I thought someone was a mentor, but then I actually get in the like inner circle of like kind of just around and helping and serving and filing papers and whatever. And they're on the call with people. And I'm like, oh, that is like heinous. Like I do not want like the way the guy's talking to that person and just like he turns into a monster. Like I've been in that situation. I'm just like, whoa, that guy turned into a whole different person, like a whole different person when he went like business mode. And I'm like, I don't want that. So it's like kind of actually the caught, not taught thing is really serious. And so when you get in those environments, you just like are learning tenfold.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Bad experiences. I don't know if this is bad experience, but I definitely not too long ago sat down with somebody and I thought, I'm going to give this guy some real just like time with me. I think I could, I could disciple him up a little bit.
Yep.
And towards the middle to the end of our conversation, he kind of said, man, Mark, I'm just glad that you're kind of looking to me for some mentorship and discipleship.
Stop.
And I thought, what? I don't want to be like you. I was thinking I could help you out.
Yeah, that was reverse. Okay, that is actually really funny. But yeah, but that's the best way to say it is like, I don't want to be like that person. And that's okay to feel that way.
Yeah. So in terms of kind of how you've found these people, because you have enough of an internet presence that I bet you could raise the flag and some people might come to you. Like you said, those might not actually be the people you want.
Probably some strange people, but yeah.
So how do you find people and then realize this is actually somebody worth investing time in? Because the way you described kind of initiating this, it's not like one call. It's you're going to go work for them effectively.
No, totally. I think a couple of things, and so I'll just use the two prominent examples that people can probably see from the internet. And I think I think these two examples actually muddy the level of mentorship and partnership in a good way. Meaning, that's actually where I think I get the mentorship is because I'm partnering with these guys. So Jeremy would be an obvious example with family teams, and then John Tyson with all the stuff I'm doing with him. Now, those guys to me are probably the single most influential men on my life. Just like they're just being around them, their thoughts, how they see the world, how they see the scriptures, questions they've answered me. Jeremy way longer than John being newer, but even before I knew John, him actually from afar was mentoring me through his books, his podcasts. And I think that's a real thing, by the way. You can genuinely be impacted by people from afar. But the best way I can say it is, how do I say this clearly? It's back to the value add, right? So for me, I wasn't like trying to do this strategically to like get close with them, but what I realized is I have certain skill sets. So if you're watching this and you're the mentee position, what are your genuine skill sets? And the low rung of that bar is what we already talked about, which is true. Go get coffee, run errands, like just hard work. That anyone can do that. But is there a level up from there of like genuine value? You do construction, carpentry, finances, I don't know, software, tech, whatever. And then the next level up from there is genuinely kind of putting yourself in a position where you're serving another person or amplifying them with your skill set. And that's exactly the scenario with Jeremy and John, where like I see these guys and I'm like, man, they've been so influential in my life. And my skill set would be internet marketing platform, whatever words you want to use. So then for me, it's like, okay, I'm confident in that as a skill set. And I love these guys and they've transformed my life. I want to like use these platform internet marketing and put it on them so that more people can hear from them. Almost, so that, you know what I mean? So more people can be impacted by them. So me, it was like a very logical connection of like, how do I bend all of my skill set to offering value to them, but also not just me serving them, but like, that's where we get into the partnership side. It's basically like, So then I partnered with these guys at a shoulder to shoulder way. that isn't the mentor-mentee way, but because the partnership has happened, I'm getting the mentor-mentee just like from absorption. Like I've never used the word mentor with Jeremy or John, but I'm like every call I'm taking notes, and the way they talk about their spouse and the way that like just like I'm like, wow, this is so it's kind of like, I don't know, does that make sense? Where it's like a layer
Yeah,
up on the value add.
totally. And I think that it's funny because, Jeremy started out kind of as that pure guidance role to you, it sounds like. And then you
Totally.
guys merged into partnership. I mean, my business partner is that guy
Yeah.
who, when I was 15 years old, he was 25. And
Yep.
I still kind of look back on that and go, parents, what were you thinking letting some random 25-year-old dude take your son out to dinner every
Yeah.
week?
It was a different
But
world back then, bro. I was talking about that with my baseball coach. I'm like actually really close to my high school baseball coach. He's a mentor of mine. And he knew me since I was 4 years old. But yeah, we used to have like high school. This is totally a tangent, but like a big ordeal on the team every year was the sleepover at coach's house. And I still remember it was the best memories ever. 15-year-old guys were staying up till 2 a.m., whatever. I'm like, that doesn't fly now. Like there's no
yeah,
way. That's what he said. He's like, oh yeah, I haven't done that for like 15 years. I'm like, it's a different world, man. Different world.
yeah. So we didn't really talk through the timeline of your story, but tell me if I'm wrong. Here's my impression is that you kind of hit on something really early in life around the time you were 19 years old that
Yep.
popped you into the general consciousness of the Christian culture. And at some point, somebody must have told you, hey, man, you should get out of Dodge and focus in on family and kind of be in a place where you might not be pulled by some of the forces that we've seen destroy
Totally.
other folks who have become,
Yeah.
Christian celebrities. So who did that for you? It sounds like it was before Jeremy or John. So
Yeah.
was that
No, so
kind of
it's funny to hear your
mentorship, or
recap of
was
the
that
story from
just
like how it looks and how long ago it is, and then you nailed some of it, and then some of it I'll fill in some gaps.
okay?
Yeah, so I think I was like a couple years later than that, but not much. I think 21, 22, I start doing internet stuff. Some of it goes really viral, really quick, and it's overwhelming. It's like a searing light on me and my soul, and I never want to repeat that moment. Like virality at a large level is actually very dark 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but got through it. And that was actually where Jeremy came in. I talk about this in my Take Back Your Family book. And this actually maybe is an encouragement to the mentors. And this is a little bit of a few minute story, but so I one of my best friends, best man at my wedding, he was roommate with me at the time, and just one of my good buddies still to this day. He grew up in the same church that Alyssa grew up, my wife, and that Jeremy not necessarily grew up in, but was really connected at that same era when Jeff, that's also his name, so it's confusing, and Alyssa grew up. I think Jeremy was the youth pastor, actually, if I'm remembering that right. So this was actually his last kind of gig, or one or two gigs before he went business world. So Jeremy was like in that church circle. Okay. So everyone kind of like stayed connected after that, it was a decade later, whatever. So Jeff comes to me and was like, hey, I was getting a lot of advice. A lot of people, older guys, would tell me what to do, plan a church, whatever. I didn't want to do that. And Jeff was like, hey, there's this one guy, Jeremy, like he used to be connected to us in this church. He's running this big company called Epitheo now. Like it just is kind of like, you should just talk to him because he's kind of has unique thoughts on Christianity, business, video, production, creativity, like all the things that I kind of accidentally stepped into. And so I hit him up. And this actually does show the flip side, by the way, too, if anyone does have more of a mentor side of things, that there is actually times to like lean into that rather than like, oh, always come serve me. And Jeremy did that dramatically, where I just reached out to him, and he was just like, I think he was already going to be in. So he was in Ohio. I was in Seattle. Epitheo had an office in Portland at the time. And I think he was either already going to be in there or just used it as an excuse to go. But he basically was like, yep, sounds good. Like meet me next week at like 8 p.m. in Portland, and we'll just like hash it out for like an hour or two. So he like gave me his time for like one little stint.
Yeah.
And then I drive down to Portland, and it's actually him and John Collins, if you know John Collins with the Bible Project.
Yeah.
So it was both of them, never met either of them. And they just radically shaped the trajectory of my life. That conversation literally changed everything that I did from that point on. I probably would have gone just into ministry if I didn't have that conversation with them. Then I fly home, and I tell this story in the book, and April hates that I tell this story because you'll hear why in a second with the money. But so then I fly home. A couple of days later, I get a letter from Jeremy just saying like, man, I believe in you. I'm for you. I really feel like the Lord is telling me to do this. And it's a $10,000 check. And at that point I was making like $200 a month. I was sleeping. I was living with a house with 12 guys. I had no money to like kind of do this. And he basically just said, this is seed money. Like buy a camera, buy lights. Like I believe in you. I think you're going to do this for the next decade. And I was like, wow. You know what I mean? And the crazy part is that was that. It didn't turn into like this fun not romantic, Hollywood-esque,
Yeah.
mentor thing after that. Like we didn't talk for like 2 years. That was it. He just sowed a seed, just like gave me one meeting and just said that God told him to do something. We moved on. But then as I started getting into it and stuff like that, I just kind of rang him back up like a couple years later and just kind of said like, how much that impacted me. And then we were starting to have kids. So it was different conversations. I knew he was the family guy, and he said some things before that kind of like jarred me, but we didn't have kids yet. So I didn't super take him seriously. And that kind of was the moment where then I started trying to get in his orbit and like serve him and get there. And that was then we were off to the races, where then we've just been close for a decade since. And then Family Teams was born out of that 5 or 6 years later. But yeah, is that kind of crazy? It's a crazy story when I look back on it.
No, I had no idea that had started with kind of Jeremy planting even a financial seed. I think that's super encouraging to me as I think about people that maybe I thought, well, that could be a really great relationship. And then we had a meeting and it might have gone well, and then they didn't call me back, or we didn't ever end up getting back together, is just listening to the Lord, being obedient with, hey, there might actually be a seed that gets planted. And maybe it's not, if you're kind of going upstream and you're looking for mentors, maybe it's more of a labor seed. If you're going downstream,
and you might not get something in it for a season. That's what I love looking back in the story, is there was like 2 years where we're just like, I never would have guessed we would have talked again after that. And I could tell from his obedience, I don't think he cared either. It was like, he wasn't wanting anything from me. He wasn't trying to like get like a piece of the pie of the weird virality. He was just like, Lord told me to do something. Here you go. And love you and bless you,
Yeah. No, that's really cool. So has this, it's a totally different thing, kind of hunting for that type of relationship when you're were you single at that time, or were you in a list already?
I think we were either dating or we were married, but we didn't have kids yet.
Okay.
No, we weren't. No, we weren't married. We were dating. Yep. Dating.
So being a single guy, I don't know if this is true. I feel like there's a lot more people that think, well, I'll go mentor college students or something like that. How does it change when you get to the stage where you're a 30-year-old and you've got a few little kids and you're really in the fog of war with kind of what's happening at home? How does it change in terms of looking for those people, and even the way you might spend time with them when you're slammed?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think, and that's actually a really good question, because I think it does radically change. I think it goes from rhythmic to more of like holiday-esque. And what I mean by that, like, before it was like, see, like every week, or once I would get in there, I would help people or serve or work. Now it feels like short bursts where either like, hey, I can give you this couple weeks and then I'm out. Like I can't commit to this. Or two, on the receiving end too, like, and this is something I would really encourage both mentor, mentee, and we've talked about this at Integrated. And Blake talked about this even this last one. I'm such a believer of just getting in someone else's home environment. Like that's just the best way I can say it. Like not at coffee, not just you as a dad one-on-one, but I think that's how it changed, is I'm actually trying to bring my family now as this little unit into these spaces where we just see it, feel it, sense it, know it. You know what I mean? And so, there's been a couple times where it's bold, but I'll just be like, hey, and we'll pay them, or something, whatever, but it's like, hey, Jeremy, can we just come stay with you for like 4 days? Like, I just need to see it. I need to talk to you about some stuff. I want our kids to be in that environment, and sometimes he'll say no. Sometimes he'll say yes. Sometimes I'll pay him. Sometimes we won't. There's other people of that environment. I just did that same thing with John recently. And he loved it. And they, and usually those people that, I don't know, this is just totally a guess, but again, usually the people in the mentor space that are godly and Christian and leaders, there's always an edge of hospitality to them. I think there's actually something true about that with leadership. And so there's something about that they almost like better than like you taking them away from their work. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's like,
sure.
And I think Jeremy talks about this. It's so much easier to enfold someone just at your own dinner table, because then it feels like you didn't add anything. Like I didn't add you into my schedule. You're not taking me away from my kids or my family. It's just, you just had dinner with us. And like you came over and you asked some questions. So I think kind of getting in that environment is how it's changed. And then I would say phone, like, it's so much harder for me to actually like go somewhere and meet up with someone. So there was a season where me and Jeremy had a standing hour weekly call, probably lasted a year or two. And it was just like, and here's the thing too, that I would say that I think I did do well that some people don't. And I don't do a lot of things well, but this one and I remember even Jeremy said this to me, is the minute he answered the phone, I started asking questions. Like the most annoying thing in the world is when your time is valuable and someone just wants to BS for 55 minutes. And then the last 5 minutes of the hour say, oh, okay, well, our marriage is struggling. Like, bro,
Yeah.
you just wasted everyone's time. I mean, I literally, like, he would answer and I would just be like, okay, the kid did this. What do I do about discipline? Da, da, da. Like, I'm going into it. And he's like, I actually love that because it feels so non-wasteful of my time. And so that's another random tidbit I would say.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So would you say that I'm just thinking about, even the possibility of pulling up some of these people that you're pursuing and saying, well, let's do a vacation and our family's
Yeah.
gonna pay for
Yes.
the house. Can you get to Colorado? We're gonna do
I love that.
a
If people
3-day
have the
ski.
resources, I think that's huge. And honor your mentors. And again, I know it depends on the family, depends on where your resources are at. And so it's one of those things where there's some of these are unattainable for certain people, but I think we should be working towards that. And especially with your audience, I'm guessing people are a little bit more financially savvy, are saving, have these dispensable income. But yeah, the one thing I would say that's a version of that is honor them too. Like I honestly feel like I've probably bought more nice gifts for the Pryors than like anyone else I can think of. Because it's just like over time, I need to show them that like they have changed the trajectory of our whole life. You know what I mean? And it's sad when they'll say sometimes, because I know how much they mentor, like, oh, no one does this. Or, or like, this has never happened. And we're like, yeah, like they pour in so much. So it's like, sometimes we'll get them a 3-day getaway somewhere and just like, it's a gift card for a hotel or Marriott so they can choose or whatever, and like stuff like that, like, yeah, or go together so that you can learn from it. But honor is really, really big, I think, in that environment.
Yeah, that's a great point. Gift giving. We did a whole episode on giving good gifts, but
Yeah.
back when we did that, I talked about actually using gifts to open the door of mentorship. And
Yes.
I think if you listen to people, you will,
Yes.
if you listen with an ear of, I would love to
Mhm.
bless this person, it may be an actual physical item. I had this experience where this older guy who had amazing kids that I was thinking I would love to raise kids like that. One time we were together and he told a story about these sneakers that he had wanted his whole life.
Yes.
And they were the Stan Smith Adidas and
Oh.
they're cool again now. And so I'm sure my phone was listening to him talk because it
Yes.
targeted me with Stan Smith
Yes.
Adidas.
Yes.
And I thought $100 for a way to kind of open the door to who knows what, definitely worth it.
And not just $100, but that's a perfect example of $100 for like a very heart level, like desire storytelling gift. Do you know what I mean? Like that's
Totally.
a different level of a gift. And me and John talk about this, Tyson, all the time. And I did this for him. And he actually just told a story about this at a conference. And it was really honoring to me of get the gifts for people and mentors, but it could be anyone, but we're talking about mentors, get them that like, it's like it's a repeat use item that conjures up the story every time the shoes get put on, the fire gets lit, the pan gets used. So like I can think of 2 examples with John and Jeremy right now, where Jeremy, he cooks all the time. He's a huge cook, Shabbat, all this stuff, loves cast iron. And so there's like, and I'm obsessed with cast iron. There's this really fancy cast iron company called Smithy Ironware, and they're like $300 cast iron pans. They're almost copper and beautiful, and like they're handcrafted. And so I just got him one of those. And now it's like every time I see like Kelsey not anymore, she's not in the house, but like Instagram of like Jeremy cooking, I'm like, I see him using the pan. Like it's just, so it's like this, it conjures up the like moment every time. And same thing with John. John is such a fire pit guy. And he spoke at one of Alyssa's like women's groups, like mastermind things a couple months ago. And he was doing it for free. And he like insisted he wanted to do it free because it was just on Zoom. He's like, hey, it's 60 minutes. I'm good. And so we got him a Brio fire pit, which is like the most insane. I love the fire pits, and it's this. And he immediately set it up and bought new chairs for it. And he literally almost texts me every time he uses it because it just conjures up the moment. You know what I mean?
For
and
sure.
So I think there's those type of gifts are radically different too. Of like do that. It's like they're almost like totems for like the relationship.
Right. And I would say also to circle back on that whole vacations with mentors thing. I don't think it has to be a weekend in Aspen. We've had families that had very limited financial means and live on a farm and said, would you guys like to come and harvest? And we'll let kids drive tractors. And, things like that can be, just as
fun.
appealing.
It's utilizing your own version of your own resources.
Right. So it doesn't have to be luxury. I think there's
Mm-mm.
creative ways. I really like what you said about hospitality, to just think, how could we bring people into our scene, whether we're the mentee or the mentor,
Yeah.
and kind of, you know, s- use what we've got to try and
Yes.
create some
Or
openings.
well, it's the best book I can recommend on that too is Power of Moments. That book changed my life on how I try to make memories, how I give gifts. And it matters. It really matters. And it really makes this create this relational web. I even think of like when I've been blessed by that. There was one example, and this is a good example just because I think it shows you the disparity of money isn't everything. I got asked to speak at a very large church, one of the largest churches in the nation. Okay. I show up to the hotel room, and because it was such a big opportunity, I didn't even say like I charge, or I was just like, I'm happy to be here, pay me $0. But I show up at the hotel, and on the desk is two things: an envelope and a shoebox. The envelope has one of the largest honorariums I've gotten to this day. So I'm just being honest. And that blew me away, especially at that age. But next to it was a pair of Jordans I've wanted for like 10 years that I think they just somehow found on my Instagram. Now, to this day, like the money just got spent and disappeared, right? And it was 100x whatever the Jordans cost, or 10, I don't know what the math is, okay? And or 200 or whatever. And then the Jordans were 150 bucks, $125, and to this day I still have them. They still bring up those memories. And like basically that was the better gift than the
Huh.
money, even though
Yeah.
like and because it was like this totem-esque tangible representation, something I still see in my closet, still wear. And I'm just like, there's something about that like that disparity was such an obvious, interesting example of like the thing matters more than the money. And when you get to create those opportunities for people, it does something.
Yeah. So you've done this a bunch. You've done long term, you've done short moments with people. Has it ever gone really badly and you'd say, well, don't ever do this?
Yes, 100%. I could probably think of two relationships where I'm like, that was not, I did not, it went bad in different ways, those two, in different ways. But I would say the best thing I would say is, and this is actually advice from Jeremy, is the phrase he uses: never get unequally yoked with someone because if you get close enough with a mentor, it does start turning into a partnership, and then the partnership is very strong. And both these guys I entered into business with after I kind of was in relationship with them, thinking they were more mentor-esque figures. But looking back, I think the lesson I learned is I went too fast because of the value I was thinking it was going to add or whatever. And I didn't ask the question, are we equally yoked? And what Jeremy means by that was helpful to me is like spiritually, like are values similar? Like do you feel like you operate on the same context? And it proved itself when everything went to crap. And it's like, oh, wow, that guy operates on a wildly different base, like aggressive, worldly, ridiculous, extracting, no reasonableness, stuff like that. And so, yeah, I learned the hard way that, and if you're not going to get super serious with someone, it doesn't matter. But the more you let the tentacles wrap, I would say the more you need that equally yoked thing to actually be climbing at the exact same degree. And it's really, really important of just like value system. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you can also I haven't had this happen, but I also know people that the cousin of that is they've just been infected, for lack of a better term, with like bad advice, bad
Mm.
vision, like bad, like that is, they just got allured because that guy was really successful, but he also was like terrible husband, terrible, like with, whatever. And it's like, I don't know, don't be like that guy. You know what I mean? And
For sure.
so I think that's a version of it too, that I think can be really damaging.
Yeah. I think for me, it's become, at some point, I don't think you should do this on the first date, because then you're that weird guy who's talking about marriage.
But yeah,
But
you do want to articulate at some point.
at some point, I've kind of gotten to the point with mentees or mentors where I say, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm after.
Yeah.
And it's a lot like what you just talked about with asking questions on the front
Yeah.
end. We don't have time to waste 2 years going on
Yes.
hikes,
Yes. Yes.
and talking about our dogs.
Yes.
Let's get to it. I'm after something, or I'm willing to invest in you because I want to see some returns in
Yes.
you. And I've wasted time on both ends of the
Yeah.
relationship thinking we were going somewhere, and then it never launched, and I realized, well, I never really asked
Yeah.
to go there.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't be surprised that I wasted some
Yeah, I
time.
think it's almost like see it in two phases. And I think that's super clear because if either of these phases go wrong, it goes wrong. The first one is what we talked about. Just get in there, get your hands dirty, offer value, get in the orbit. Then I would say within a couple months, it probably feels a certain way, or within maybe a year, but that still actually feels pretty long. It feels like it's taking on a certain, like, kind of like where it's now obviously that connection. then at that point you have to articulate it. Someone, the mentee or the mentor, has to say, what are we doing here? Like, I want you in this orbit because in a couple of years, I want you to look like X. As the mentee, it's like, I want to gain X and then I want to leave. Like, it also gives like good escape routes without it being too, weird.
Yeah.
Like kind of goals, like go goal oriented, go purpose, go vision after you can get in that orbit. And I think that's really, and articulate that's really important.
Cool. So just to wrap up, I like to get super specific with people on this podcast and kind of I know that based on our survey, at least the majority of guys who are listening are going, I would like mentors. How do I do it? So if you were in a big city, because a lot of our folks are, and you didn't have any of this and you actually had to take some tangible steps. If a guy just called you up and said, Jeff, what should I do? Do you have kind of, here's where I would start out in specific?
Yeah. I'd say make a list of, you could probably name 10 people that are within 1 or 2 relational connections to you in your city that you want to be like or gain something from in one vertical: finance, family, marriage, whatever. So write those down. Then, you obviously need to be closer to some than others. Make a plan of how to kind of get in that orbit. And then 2 or 3, then like practically offer value. Like that is not a hard thing to do when you know who the person is. Just like, and it can even be like, can I mow your lawn? Can I clean your house? There's a humility about that I think some guys like just refuse, but it's like that actually is doing something to your heart that you actually need more than the other thing, because you're in a stage where like you need to hustle and build something and get in there. So like, what is it? Or if it's in the business route, like, hey, do you need an assistant for a month or a week? Or do you want me to do this thing? I mean, I think it starts at the assistant level, kind of jokey, like what those things are that like a Hollywood assistant does, like wash the car or whatever. No, but it goes beyond that. Like, it's like genuine value. Like, okay, and then think about you. What do you do? What are you good at? And can you see any alignment with that person that would help them, right? And so I just think it's pretty practical, and just break it down and write it down and then go for it. And then ask the Lord to open those doors, because I think relationships aren't commodified and transactional, but actually, like, if the Lord wants to breathe on it, then he will, but just like give it some, sow some seeds.
No, I love that. My answer to that question has always been, if it's important to you,
yes,
I'm sure that there's exceptions to this, but often you will see it in a family's budget. So
yes,
the budget tends to be a funding plan for the family vision. And if you are in a position where you're saying, I can't find guys to kind of mentor me, I tell people, just figure out what 4 hamburgers a month costs, put a budget line item in, and say, I'm going to pay for food for 4 guys. And if I go sit at a meeting and I think that was awkward and terrible, no sweat, I'm on to the next one. If it was great, then that might be the guy that you're going to call up next and say, hey, can I take your video content and edit out clips and post it to the Abraham's Wallet Instagram channel? I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe
and that would just blow someone's mind who, like, yes. Or another example too that I just thought of is, it was an email. It's like, sometimes it's just a tonal difference and like a communication difference than just saying like, let me, like, can I pick your brain or whatever? That one kills me. Is I got an email, like, cause I get a lot of emails because all our stuff's public and people and, and reaching out and wanting things or whatever. And one just caught and I'm always a no, just because it's like, I don't have the time and I don't have the bandwidth, but I want to also be open to the spirit to, like, open doors. And there was one guy that just reached out. I've never heard of him, never met him. And it was just how his email was worded that I was like, I will give you as much time as you want from me. And it was literally just like, it was a very long email. It was very respectful, but it was also like short and like, it was like to the point, but it was like couple things he did in that email is, one, he showed me that he has gone down all the rabbit, because I'm a content guy. So this is a very specific thing with content people, where like, if you want to ask me a question that I have already answered, you do not know how to do your homework.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I've written a book on what you just asked me, right? That kills me. Okay. So he wrote stuff of like, okay, he's read the books, he's listened to the podcast, he's dug in, he's taken notes. And then I think he said something like, I can't even remember what he said, but he was just like, it was just even a thing. He was like, hey, I bet you'll be eating lunch sometime in the next 3 weeks where you're not technically working, and that lunch probably takes you 15 to 25 minutes. Can I just like have that 15-minute? Like, it was something I could tell he honored my time. He was like, I don't want your work time. Like little things like that. And he went like on 4 different versions of that like honored me, did all his homework, like was like, hey, I know, like kind of caught some margin. And I was like, oh, just the way he worded that, I was like, I'm in. What do you need? And I just called him like the next day. Like, and that was just because of the spirit he brought to it. I was like, I'm in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's all good stuff, man. So I think what we've really covered here is how to get Jeff to mentor you. You've got some good tips. You can find his email. It's public, and
it's all out there.
If you study all the video content, you might even be able to get within a few miles of his house. I don't know.
And Maui, that's probably very possible.
Yeah, cool. Well, I appreciate your time, Jeff. You didn't have to do this, but you've benefited me a lot, and just from everything from the big stuff on how to think about family down to really practical stuff like what camera to buy and how to make video content. So I appreciate every little bit of time you've given me, and a lot of it you've given to other people, and I just consumed it. So thanks for showing up. Anything else that you're up to that our people should know about before we buzz?
Nothing that I can think of, but just want to say, yeah, thanks for having me. This was a blast. And for anyone listening or watching, I am also pretty available on social. I don't get to every single message, but if a question comes up or something from this sparked a thought, DM me or something, or leave a comment. I love interacting on that stuff. So yeah, I love it. But after some of the pastoral things the last week, maybe I'm rethinking that, but but no, in all honesty, I love engaging with like conversations based on stuff we're doing. So yeah, I loved it.
Cool. Well, we will see you soon.
Thanks so much, man.